as we talk about here, the reproductive system, what we'll do is sort of break it up into sections. So we'll start just talking about overall reproductive system. Then we'll talk about male reproductive system, go over male reproductive organs. Then we'll move into female reproductive organs. Then we move into a little bit about pregnancy and childbirth. Talk a little bit about multiples, twins, fraternal, identical twins, triplets, that sort of stuff. And then we'll be done. Okay, so first off, obviously the function of the reproductive system, the purpose of the reproductive system is to make new organisms. So now we're talking about human cells to make new children. So we know that in humans, like other mammals, we have internal fertilization. Sperm meets the egg cell inside of the female's body. So when we talk about the various parts of the reproductive system, they're adapted to doing that, to allowing fertilization to take place, and then in the female, for the embryo to grow and develop. And there's going to be a little bit of overlap. When we talked about the testes, in what other body system were we talking about the testes and ovaries? We've already covered this. We covered the, ready? The endocrine system, because they produce what?
Hormones.
Hormones. They produce hormones, and that's part of the endocrine system. But they also have other functions related to reproduction. Okay? So the testes of the male produce two things that are important in reproduction. What's one of them? Michael? Sperm. And how about the other? Testosterone. Good. So they produce testosterone, which is the male sex hormone. And they produce sperm cells, which are required for fertilization to happen.
How does the kid get the dad's traits when it's the mom that gives birth?
We're going to get there in just a couple minutes. So it's the sperm cells that carry the father's chromosomes. Half of the father's chromosomes. So testosterone. Like you guys just told me, testosterone is a hormone. Okay, a small chemical produced in the testes. It circulates around through the blood and has different effects on different parts of the body. So, when we talked about testosterone, what is it responsible for? What does testosterone do in the body? Right?
It makes their muscles grow.
That's one thing, is that testosterone increases muscle mass. Okay? Testosterone is what we say is responsible for the development of male secondary sex characteristics. So there's obviously differences in anatomy between males and females, but then there's all the other things that make males and females different. Things like facial hair. Okay? When testosterone levels increase, that stimulates the growth of facial hair. Body hair. A deeper voice. These are things that we consider secondary sex characteristics. And they come about once testosterone levels start increasing in a male's body during puberty. It also is responsible, like Maya said, for muscle, stronger muscle tone. And this is why some people may artificially give themselves testosterone injections to artificially increase their muscle mass. And what do we call that?
Steroids.
Right, steroids are basically a testosterone or testosterone-like chemical that people inject into themselves to further stimulate the development of muscle mass.
Can that give you like a big temper though?
Can do lots of things, yes. Because testosterone, one of the other things it does is it affects mood. It's responsible for aggressiveness. That an elevated level of testosterone leads to more aggressive behavior, or like Blake said, anger, things like that. And so that's why taking steroids is illegal and unhealthy is because testosterone affects many parts of the body, not just muscle mass. One interesting fact as well is that females also have testosterone. So even though females don't have testes, they do have testosterone in their body. Smaller amounts of this hormone. It's produced in the ovaries and in other parts of the body as well, but females have a small level of testosterone. And males, on the same hand, have small amounts of female sex hormone as well. The levels are different, but they each contain some of those.
Is that how the kid gets his father's trait?
Not yet. We're getting there in 1 minute. So here's where we begin with that. So as we said, the male sex cell, so that's what we call sperm and egg cells. They have a couple different names. They might be called sex cells. They sometimes are called gametes is the other term, sort of more scientific term. And so the male sex cell is a sperm cell. And this is what a single sperm cell looks like. It has a small little circular head of the sperm. Behind that, there's kind of a little motor. And then there's along basically a flagellum. Okay. And that sperm cell contains DNA, chromosomes from the father. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but a normal number of chromosomes for a human is 46 chromosomes. 23 of those come from the sperm cell, 23 come from the egg cell. So the sperm cell contains 23 out of the father's 46 chromosomes. When the male produces sperm cells in the testes, okay, when the cells are dividing to form these sperm cells, half of the chromosomes go into each sperm cell. And which half it is random. So each sperm cell contains sort of a different combination of chromosomes.
So what happens?
So the sperm cell contains half of the father's chromosomes. When it combines with an egg cell, the egg cell has what? Half of the mother's, the woman's chromosomes. When they combine, we have half of the mother's chromosomes combined with half the father's chromosomes. So the baby has some characteristics of the mother and some from the father.
So like what I'm trying to get here is that basically the sperm has all the cells from the dad.
Chromosomes. Has half the chromosomes from the dad.
So that's how babies
Yep.
measure and have father traits.
Yep, exactly. So this is the sperm cell. Now the testes that produce these sperm cells, okay, in the male, they're sort of held outside of the body. They're not inside of the body, but they're held outside of the body in a pouch of skin that's called the scrotum. And there's a reason for this. And the reason has to do with sperm cells, and if they're at too high a temperature, they're not produced effectively. So when sperm cells are at normal body temperature, 98.7, they're not produced and they don't mature very well. But since in males they're held slightly outside of the body in the scrotum, they're a little bit cooler, which allows sperm cells to be produced effectively. Okay, so we have here, if we're looking, this is a picture of the male reproductive organs facing sideways. We have the scrotum, which is this pouch of skin, and inside, that's one of the testes. There's 2 testes in the male. And that's where the sperm cells are produced. Again, they're at a slightly cooler temperature. Sperm cells, like we said, they have that flagellum, that tail, which allows them to swim. But they have a long journey to make. For a sperm cell to fertilize an egg cell, it has to go a fairly long way for a tiny little sperm cell. So, the male produces sperm cells, but in addition, produces some other fluids. And together we call sperm cells, along with the fluids that go along with them, semen. And And semen contains liquid, it contains some nutrients so that the sperm have the energy they need to make their way to the egg cell eventually. So we'll talk about where those different fluids are produced inside of the male's body in the next couple slides. Michael?
Is there a difference if one baby gets more sperm cells than another one?
No, and we'll get there too in a little bit, but it's pretty interesting is that the sperm cells are sort of attracted. The egg that's in the female's body releases certain chemicals which attract the sperm, so they know basically where to go. And so a male will release millions of sperm cells at one time. They're all trying to make their way to the egg. But once they get there, as soon as one single sperm cell enters the egg cell to fertilize it, there's a sudden change that happens to the egg cell, and it completely sort of shuts out any other sperm. So only one single sperm cell can fertilize one single egg cell because of that change that happens.
Well, I'm trying to, so what is it, so what are you saying basically?
That only one sperm cell can fertilize an egg cell. Single little tiny sperm cell. So this semen that's produced, it helps protect the sperm, gives them something to swim in, and also provides them with energy and nutrients so that they can make their journey to the egg. This is what they really look like. This is an actual microscope picture of what some sperm cells would look like. And you could see they're small. You could see the little oval white head of the sperm, a little enlargement behind it. It's kind of like the motor, and then the flagellum, which is the tail of the sperm cell. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the various parts and where they're located and also what they do. Now, first, let me say that these organs are not really a part of the reproductive system. Ureter, urinary bladder, urethra. Where did we talk about those? Daniel?
Was it the excretory system?
It was, in the excretory system. Okay? But they're in the same location, and there's a little bit of overlap here in the urethra, but we'll just we'll talk about them. And they're also there in the diagram to help us understand where things are located here. So first off, the ureter. So it's kind of cut off in this diagram. You can't see sort of where it's coming from, but you should know.
The stomach?
No, where's the ureter connects what? Hold on one second. To the bladder, right?
The kidney?
Yeah, the kidney. Up here would be a kidney. And so remember, the kidney's producing that drip of urine, which goes down the ureter. Okay. And it brings it into the bladder. So this is the urinary bladder. So the ureter, the urinary bladder, which holds the urine, so it's ready to be eliminated. And then we should know that then the tube that carries that urine out of the body is the urethra. And this is where that overlap is, because the urethra also carries sperm out of the male's body, semen out of the body. But really, these are parts of the excretory system. All right, so now if we get into the actual parts of the reproductive system,
Go back for a minute.
so the urethra carries urine and semen out of the body. All right, so we'll go back to one, okay, Dana? All right, so if we look at the parts of the reproductive system, like we said, the testes sometimes called testicles, means the same thing. There's two of them. In our view here, it's a side view, so we really only see one. Okay, but they're both held outside the body in the scrotum. And as we said, their job is to make sperm and to make testosterone, to make the male sex hormone and to make the sperm cells for reproduction. They're held outside of the body in a pouch of skin called the scrotum. And again, that's to keep these testes cool at the proper temperature for sperm production. All right, so if we look down here at the testes, after the testes produce sperm cells, for them to leave the man's body, they have to follow sort of this pathway. They go up, loops around, and then out of the body. So we have this long tube here. Comes out of the scrotum and goes up. The name of this tube is called the vas deferens. The vas deferens is this tube that leads out of the testes. And it basically carries the sperm cells to the urethra.
What's it? The
Vas deferens. D-E-F-E-R-E-N-S. Does anybody know the name of an operation or procedure a man can have if they don't want to have children anymore? There's a word for it. You know what it is called, Abby? Yeah, it's called a vasectomy. And that word, vasectomy, comes from this long tube. Because a vasectomy is a procedure when the doctor does a real simple operation where they go into a man's body and they basically cut the vas deferens, this tube here, and then they tie it off. And so what that means is now sperm cells that the man produces in the testes, they make their way along the vas deferens, but they can't continue on any farther. And so the male during sex doesn't release any of those sperm cells anymore. And if he doesn't release any of those sperm cells anymore, they can't make a woman pregnant anymore. So it's sort of a permanent means of birth control. Okay? So if a man wishes they never want to have any more children, they can have that operation, and then it means they can not make a woman pregnant. Now, they're not always 100% effective. Once in a while, the two ends that the doctor cut could sometimes heal back together. And that means that he would be able to make a woman pregnant. But it's a very small percentage, but it is sometimes happens. So that's what a vasectomy is. It comes from that name, the vas deferens.
So, like, how does the testes transfer the DNA from the man's body to the baby?
So when the testes make a sperm cell, half of the man's chromosomes go into that sperm cell. When that sperm cell carrying half of the chromosomes goes out of the man's body into the woman's body and fertilizes an egg, now the egg has half of the man's chromosomes, half of the mother's chromosomes, and it has genes from both
like
parents.
breath or something?
What's that?
Like breath?
No, during reproduction. So when a male deposits sperm, this is called intercourse. When a male deposits sperm in the female vagina, then those sperm cells start making their way to the egg cell.
How do you do that?
We'll get there in a minute. Once we get to the female, we can talk more about that. All right, so and it's okay to ask questions. That's fine. It's not a big deal. This is science class. You're supposed to be able to ask questions. So don't worry about if you have a question. I'll give you the scientific answer, no problem. I get lots of questions. I've done this for 15 years. There's no need to be embarrassed. It's okay. So anyway, we're following these sperm cells out of the testes into the vas deferens. Along the way, though, the different parts of the semen need to be added. So that liquid and that protein. So that happens in a couple places. One of them is up here. This is called the seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle. And this makes some of the semen. It adds fluids to help nourish the sperm. And you can see if you follow the path, the sperm cells are coming up here to the vas deferens. The seminal vesicle adds some fluid. And then another gland called the prostate gland that also adds some of the fluid for the sperm. Now, why have you probably heard about the prostate gland before? Right? Yeah, because prostate cancer is the most common form of cancer that affects men, especially as they get older. My grandfather passed away from prostate cancer. My father had prostate cancer. Very common.
Did your dad survive?
Yep, he did. He had surgery on his prostate gland, and they removed parts of the tumor. And so this is very, very common. And chances are you will know somebody at some point that has prostate cancer or had it. It's very common. And so the prostate gland, what its purpose is to make semen, part of the semen, to add to the sperm cells as they make their way through the body. So prostate gland makes that fluid. And then finally, the mixture.
Is the prostate gland like if you remove it, wouldn't it just that would just be like the same as vasectomy? So like would it kill you if you remove the whole gland?
No, sometimes they do. So if a man does have prostate cancer, depends on how big the tumor is, or if it's spread. There's lots of factors, but sometimes they could remove just a small part where the tumor is of the gland and leave the rest of it.
But then they can't have kids anymore if they cut the whole thing out.
Well, if they cut the whole thing out, yeah. But usually a man won't. I mean, not always, but usually men get prostate cancer as they're older, and usually they're past the point when they're having children anymore. But you're right, it could affect their ability to have children. And sometimes they cut out a part of it. Sometimes they remove the whole prostate gland. Sometimes they may use radiation or chemotherapy to help treat the cancer. There's a few different types of treatments that they could have. So, and when they do the surgery for prostate gland to remove the whole gland or to remove part, the doctors they try to be very, very careful about how they remove it, because there's lots of nerves there. Sometimes after a man has his prostate gland removed, it could affect urination, okay, because it's in the same vicinity and there's nerves that control all that. So like, for example, when my grandfather had prostate surgery 15 years ago, they just did regular surgery. And I think I told you guys when my dad had prostate surgery last year or 2 years ago, they used the Da Vinci robot. Again, because they want to be very, very careful. They want to do very delicate surgery, and allows them to remove what they need to remove without damaging any of the tissue that surrounds it. So prostate gland makes fluid for the sperm, and then that semen leaves the man's body through the penis. And the penis is for depositing, so it comes out of the urethra through the penis. It's okay, we can say that word. Those are the only terms we use for anatomy, the scientific words. And the penis delivers that semen into the female reproductive system. During sex, the male deposits sperm into the female reproductive system, and then those sperm cells are ready to try and make their way to the egg. That's their goal, to fertilize that egg that's in the female's body. All right, any questions about the functions of any of the male reproductive organs? Which one? Oh, urethra carries urine and semen out of the body. Carries urine and semen out of the body. Again, here we just have sort of a different view, Same basic parts. Again, the testes, or here that's called testicle, means the same thing. Okay, you have the long vas deferens tube that loops up. Okay, goes around and over the bladder. Along the way, you have the seminal vesicle, you have the prostate exam, and then out of the body through the urethra, which leads through the penis.
Exam.
What did I say?
Prostate exam.
Oh, prostate exam. Prostate exam is also, so once a man gets to a certain age, they start to have, because prostate cancer is so common, they start to have a prostate exam each year whenever they go to the doctor. And the doctor basically just feels to see if their prostate gland is enlarged or not. Okay? One of the signs that there may be a problem with the prostate gland is if the prostate gland is enlarged. And so they just feel it to see if it's enlarged. And if it is, they may then send the man for further testing. There's also certain chemicals in a man's blood that can indicate whether or not they may have the beginning of prostate cancer. It's called PSA, prostate-specific antigen. Basically, if they saw that a man's prostate maybe was enlarged, they would probably do a blood test. They'd look at his PSA level, and they would see if it's elevated, then that may be an indication that that he may have prostate cancer, and then they would explore it further. They might do a biopsy, which was when they take a small sample of cells from a part of a person's body, look at them to see if they may be cancerous or not. And so that's sort of the beginnings of how a man can be diagnosed if they do have prostate cancer. Yeah, I guess we're at a good stopping point since tomorrow we work on female reproductive system. Yeah.
How come people like use another term?
Just because, you know, there are slang terms that we generally don't use that are not scientific, so it's just, there's different words. But we only use the scientific term. What's that? Okay, you guys got a few minutes left. You can sit quietly.